Shaw community, it's Jay Barnard and
Ashley Bocage.
the recovery couple coming back to you with episode
5.
Episode 5. We're coming at you with episode 5, and it's all about grieving. It's one of these things as a recovering alcoholic and addict, I've had a hard time to figure out. I mean, even when I wasn't an alcoholic and an addict, I ran from it. Did you do the same?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you never allowed yourself to actually
Feel things.
So you actually have to feel in order to go through the grieving process, right? So I think one of the most important and most sexy things you've ever told me, which was just a couple weeks ago when I lost my best friend, your friend too, Mike Weldon, who I grew up with, really introduced me to what grieving was supposed to be, right? So as an addict and an alcoholic, I just wanted to run from all those emotions. I really didn't even know what those emotions were because I never grieved in recovery. The only grieving I really did was with my grandfather who passed away. And for me, it was more like I was watching my grandfather suffer. Mm-hmm. So that was more painful than, the actual passing, because I was actually, I was relieved that he wasn't suffering anymore. Mm-hmm. I was sad because I had lost my grandfather, but it wasn't like a sudden death or somebody young like Mike, or I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was coming, and I would have rather it come so he didn't have to suffer. And that's another part of grieving is watching a family member transition into their next life, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think the most important thing that I got from you and got out of you was, the fact that I was really trying to rush the grieving process.
Well, you were trying to skip it, is what you were trying to do.
Yeah, you're right. I was trying to skip the grieving process. I this is about a month ago, I guess now, and I had grieved, what I thought was grieving Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, mm-hmm. and on Sunday I said I'm going to be done with this and move on with my life. Mm-hmm. The part of that, what I didn't understand is I was actually selling myself short. And I was actually selling Mike short with the friendship, memories, and everything that we had done our whole entire lives, as I known him since I was 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And then also in that whole sentence, what did you say?
You're going to miss it.
And that's it, right? So most of us want to miss the grieving process because we don't want to feel those feelings. Yeah. What I've learned from that, and because of Ashley, I was like, oh my God, that's the smartest thing I ever heard. Why do I want to sell myself short of my feelings that I have, and also sell, a real good friend of mine short, or whatever the case may be? Because it's not just about losing somebody. Grieving could be, what other grieving forms are there?
Well, especially when you're in active addiction and alcoholism, it's a huge grief process. If you want to get out of it, so you have to grieve. I had to grieve my old self. I had to grieve that part of my life. I had to grieve the people that were in my life. I had to grieve, just that whole aspect, which I thought was so important to me and was my whole life, and I was so entrenched in my addiction. That's who I thought I was. That was an identity. I thought that was my identity, as I was an alcoholic and addict, and I had to learn how to grieve that and let that go. And that's a very scary thing to do.
Because you didn't know who yourself.
I had no idea who I was.
Well, you thought you were that person before.
Yes. That's the only person I remembered.
Right, and that was your defense mechanism for all the people that ever hurt you, or all the things that ever happened to you. Yeah. So you had all these walls and barriers and you didn't have any boundaries, but you had walls or barriers or defense mechanisms that kept you in that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. So when you come into recovery, you need to start the grieving process of one's life, which is the scariest thing in the world to do, because you start realizing what you have done, mm-hmm. not only just to yourself but to other people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in my case, I missed some passings away and ran from funerals and did some things, but also grieving, loss of jobs, all kinds of things, businesses. What else is there when it comes to grieving? COVID. We could talk about COVID.
Yeah,
There's a lot of grieving when it comes to COVID in the aspect of you can't hug somebody, you can't be around these people, you have a curfew, or no, there isn't a curfew, but you can't go here, you can't go there.
Right.
You know, especially for young kids like my daughter Destiny. You know, who now can't, you know, there's no school, and she's just like, why can't I be around my friends, and why can't friends come to my house, and why can't we go to Walmart and buy toys, and why can't we go to the water slides? And you know, so as a parent, I also grieve that, because I feel the pain of my kid that, you know, just wants to be a kid, and really can't be a kid in the world that we're living today, in the way that she knows how to be a kid.
Yeah.
So we have to like adjust our living to what's going on in the world, which brings on grieving, right?
Right, absolutely. And like it also, like when for me being in recovery, I also have to grieve like people who are still in active addiction, right? So, and that was said to me by one of my very, very good friends. You know, they had to grieve me even though I was alive. You know, and that's a very, like, that has always stuck with me, and it's always stuck very close to me. You know, watching somebody kill themselves slowly, but are still alive, they're still breathing, but you have to grieve them, right? And you have to put those boundaries up, to be able to take care of yourself.
Well, and that's just so the sad part in that is that you have to watch somebody do what they do, just like many people watched us.
Yep.
and hoped and prayed and had faith and would wish that we would get a life worth living, or if we would just see, you know, what we truly were for what we were, instead of, you know, beating ourselves up for everything that we did in our lives, and then using alcohol and drugs to kill that pain in the avenues of more. But you know, on the positive side of things, that's, you know, where Ashley and I and a bunch of other people in the world come together to break the stigma, to show people that they're not alone, right?
Yeah.
That you're not alone. You're never alone. You know, we understand you. We come from the same cloth. We're the same people. We're no better than nobody. We struggle every single day just like the most. Yeah. You know, so back to the grieving process, and when Ashley said, you know, you're going to miss it, it really made me, I guess I also had to be in the right place in my life to hear it. So that's another thing about recovery, is you have to be in the right place in your recovery to hear certain things. So you got to understand, at 13 plus years, I finally was in the right spot in my recovery to hear Ashley say, you're going to miss it. You know, that's a long haul of 13 plus years to finally hear somebody say you're going to miss it. Now, I'm sure many of people said to me, I'm going to miss it. I just never heard it. Or didn't want to hear it, or choose not to hear it, or ego.
This wasn't the right time.
Ego probably got in the way too, right? That's why I don't want to, you know, sometimes I don't want to hear things, because I think my ego in the past got in my way. So, you know, when I heard you're going to miss it, it made me really realize that I've never allowed myself to actually truly grieve and actually truly identify what the feelings are of grieving. Right. So that's a process in itself, because you're getting flooded with emotions when it comes to, you know, you're smiling and you're giggling and you're thinking about all the good times you had with the person. And then you're really, really upset because the person's gone. And then you're really, really frustrated and mad and angry, saying, why did you take him so early? And then you're like, you know, in my case, I'm like, well, why haven't I've never been taken? You know, all these things that I've done, and why am I not taken? And I've tried so many times to take my own life, and you just keep letting me live. Like, this is unfair. You know, so that I really learned and identified with feelings that I was running from, and allowed myself to actually sit in those feelings. Allowed myself, and still today I'm still grieving in the process. I saw one of you know, Mike and my friends when I was on a walk yesterday, and we, you know, we just reminisced. You know, we reminisced about the good old times, and Ashley and I are actually up here in a location in Keewatin where we used to come and party back in the day, 1995, 93, 94, 95. We used to call this place Nature's Coliseum. And we'd all come up here, and just coming up here and looking around, I said to her, man, it doesn't look like 93, 94, 95. Right? The grieving process started for me just when I got up here and looked at the area that I used to come and hang out with our friends. And I really felt like coming here and doing this one here for Mike, because we did hang out here a lot. We really had some good times here. So, I was just like, wow, it looks so much different up here. Not realizing, that's 25 plus years ago since I've been, up here. Interesting how things change over time, and interesting how people change over time, right? It's interesting how one's recovery changes over time when you're working on yourself, right? So allowing myself to feel those feelings that I ran away from for so long in the grieving department was the most beautiful thing I've allowed myself to go through.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible thing. And I always say that, with grief comes, we're so fortunate and so lucky enough to have that we're grieving that much for something, someone, somewhere, right? And I've lost in my life too, and that's what I've learned. And that's what I've taken from grief, is that I was blessed enough to have that connection, like I said, with someone, somewhere, somehow, to be able to feel those. And that's a beautiful thing. Not everybody has that.
Actually,
right?
you just said something important, someone. Yeah. So you might actually grieve someone you've never ever met before, but because you have a connection with them, or maybe you've watched them on TV for years and years and years. In my case, maybe Hulk Hogan. If Hulk Hogan was to die, I would probably grieve that because I was a Hulkster. I was a Hulkamaniac when I was a youngster.
Yeah.
Or maybe Elf or what. Those are some good examples. Elf and Hulkamania, yeah. But at the end of the day, that's interesting you bring that up, because we are connected to people.
Yeah.
We're connected to people. So even though you don't necessarily know somebody, or have never talked to somebody, or never met that person, their aura brings you to them. And even, when they hurt, or they're going through something, or you feel for them. And even if, when they pass on to the next life and they pass away, you're very sad, even if you haven't met them.
Yeah.
And that's a grieving process in itself, because the beautiful thing about people is that's just it. We're connected, right? So Ashley and I, the bond with Ashley and I will always be the bond, is Ashley and I are addicts and alcoholics. That's why Ashley and I started, connecting, because of the alcoholism and drug addiction. Yeah. That's the bond, right? From there, obviously, things picked up a little bit, and,
a little.
From there.
Yeah.
But that was the common bond, right? So the connection that we had. So, social media and the platforms that allow you to connect with people that are in pain, that are needing help, that are wanting help, that are, searching for help, that are trying. You may never ever see these people, but they'll send you messages and they'll connect with you because they have something you want, or they can relate to something you're going through, or they can relate to your story, or they can relate to your message. And that's why I always say sharing saves lives. Sharing saves lives. Your story, my story is going to resonate with somebody.
It's somebody else's story.
It's somebody else's story. And then that gives them the hope that they can have a life worth living too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that also falls into the grieving process of, allowing yourself to connect with other people and allow other people to come in, because as addicts and alcoholics, you don't want anybody to come in. You really don't.
No.
Being an addict and an alcoholic is a very lonely life.
Yep.
It really, truly is. And the grieving process inside that is very, very lonely. And just in that self, I had to grieve letting go of the drugs and alcohol. I had to grieve letting go of the two loves of my life that kept what I thought my life going. And I didn't think that I could live without drugs and alcohol. I thought that for the rest of my life, that's what I had to do, was, inject or swallow something to keep me alive on the avenues of a mind-altering substance, which turns out to be more. Turns out that it's not like that. Turns out that you can actually get a better life one day at a time when you work on yourself and when you allow yourself to feel all the things you're supposed to feel. So what feelings come up when you're grieving?
Fear. Fear is a huge one. Fear of the unknown, fear of what's next, sadness, anger, a lot of anger, confusion, acceptance, right? You don't want to accept it. That's a hard one. Acceptance is a huge one. Sometimes you're happy and then you're sad and then you're mad, and it could go from 0 to 60 just like that. And you could go through 50 different emotions, and that's okay. I know that today. I know that when I grieve, I'm healing.
So why don't you talk, because I'm assuming that you were grieving when you thought you're going to go take off to Australia. I can assume. So this is early on in Ashley and I's relationship, and we were both grieving at the time, in the aspect of waiting for the shoe to drop. And when I say that, I was waiting for the shoe to drop on her, for her to take off on me, and she was waiting for the shoe to drop on her for me to take off on her, because that's just what happened in our lives.
Yeah.
And that's all we knew. We never knew that, there could be a life worth living together where you're actually in love with somebody, you actually do love that person, you actually get along, you actually support each other, you actually do things together.
A good life.
Yeah, like Ashley and I do everything together. We actually do everything together, and everything that we do, I enjoy doing. But this is the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah.
For me. So and for you, I can assume.
Yes.
So love is out there, is what we're saying. It does take a long time to find it sometimes, but just, never give up. And
don't rush it.
And don't rush it. That's one thing Ashley and I haven't done, is we have not rushed our love.
No.
Okay, so the feelings that you were going through at the time when you said, I can't handle this anymore, I don't know what's going on, I'm taking off to Australia because all I know how to do is run. So what were you going through there?
There was a lot of confusion. I was very scared, something I didn't think I deserved, right? So I was fighting the fact that this was too good to be true and I didn't deserve it. So there was a lot of fear-based beliefs, right? Because I believed that I wasn't worth having a good life, and that's what I'd always, that's all I had ever known, or I thought I believed, right? Or all I knew. So I was a runner. I ran, and that's what I've done my whole entire life, is I've ran away from any kind of feeling, any kind of sadness, anything that made me uncomfortable, anything that made me face myself. And to actually go through it and feel it and struggle through it and then get over it, right? So I didn't do that. So there was a mass of mixed emotions going very quickly, and it doesn't take long to spin out of control, right? And that's where I was at. I was spinning out of control, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is too much. This is too good. I don't deserve this. He's better off without me, and I'm done, right? So and I started to like literally drive away. Literally drive away. I was going
to Australia.
I was going the wrong way, but I was just going. I didn't care where I was going. I was just leaving, and that was it. Done, right? And so what I did, though, and I'm very thankful and grateful for, is what I did is I stopped. I actually stopped, and I took a deep breath, and I said, what do I have to lose, right? And then I opened up.
So you picked up the phone, you reached out, and you let out your truths.
I did. And
okay, so this part is where the most important part is. So let's say that together. You stopped.
Yeah, I stopped.
You reached out.
I reached out.
And you told your truths.
I did, yes.
Right,
I did.
so that is one of the most important things. Now, what did you get in turn from that?
Well, I got my life. I got a... I learned what being honest, and actually that my feelings are valid, and they mean something because they're mine. I learned what self-worth was. I learned that I am important, and what I have to say matters, and I learned that I have a voice.
And that somebody would listen.
And somebody listened, and
didn't judge you.
And did not judge me. That's the key too. Like, I wasn't judged, and truly listened to me and
So you poured all your grieving onto me because that's what you were going through. That's another form of grieving. So she came and, she just said, I got nothing to lose. I got everything to gain. He's either going to run, hide, or he's going to just accept me for who I am, which is a tornado mess, which in turn I was a thunder. I was thunder tornado mess. And she was a tornado mess. And together we were a hot mess. But at the end of the day, she did what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to reach out and ask for help. And most times, most people won't do that. I've done it many a times. I've kept silent, and all that's ever done is made things worse for me.
Makes you sick.
Makes you really sick inside your own mind.
Yep.
So nobody can see it. Only you can see it, hear it, and feel it. Only you, the person, can see that, feel that, and hear that, because it's your committee inside your head that's beating you up. And I think ever since then, on both sides, we realized that, we had a chance with each other. And
we weren't going anywhere.
We decided to start grieving our lives together. Our past lives together. And we started, grieving our life together and getting to know each other more than we did in that 60 days or whatever it was.
There was a bond and respect. I think there was a different kind of respect as well between the two of us that I have never had before, which was and look at us now. Now I just tell him exactly how I feel when I feel, and I'm okay with that.
I created a monster. I created a monster.
Awesome.
Yeah, but no, that's the exciting thing, is that she has a voice. She has a voice for the voiceless. She's breaking the stigma. She's giving inspiration to women that are struggling in the same avenue she is, or aren't struggling. And that's the important thing, right? So that's what this is all about, grieving. The best thing about grieving is allowing yourself to go through the process, because the process is truly beautiful.
It is.
As scary and as fear-based as it is, because most things in our life are fear-based. That's why we won't do them, because we're too scared, because we go on what memories are. So our memories tell us that this happened to us when we did this. So my memory tells me if I open up to a girl, she gets mad, and then it doesn't end well.
Right.
So I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? Or if I'm late at work, I'm going to lie to my boss about why I'm late at work, and then when I could have just told him I slept in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So our memories dictate what goes on, and then that really messes up the grieving process and doesn't allow us to grieve, really. So we're here to tell you that the grieving process is a beautiful thing. As sad as it is, it's supposed to be sad, but it's also supposed to be a time to reflect on memories and happy times, whatever the grieving process may be for you. If it's your job, if it's COVID, if it's a person you lost, if it's
even yourself,
if it's the connections you had with other people, whatever the case may be, just allow yourself to go through the process of grieving. And we can tell you that on the other side of that is really something special.
Sure is.
And for me, I just figured this out 13 plus years sober. So please don't take the road I took. Allow yourself to do that, and don't sell yourself short, and don't sell the person or thing or place that you're grieving short, because they all deserve the respect and love that grieving allows us to do, and it brings people together, right? So we would rather live on a beach in love, in a tent, grieving together, because grieving together is the best thing, rather than in a mansion alone. You're never,
Ever alone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.